because there's nothing that's necessarily keeping you motivated to keep pressing on when you get to your wit's end, because you will get to your wit's end and you'll get there multiple times. So know the reason why you want to get a PhD. Hey guys, it's Dr. Mrs. Mom and welcome back to my channel. Today, I've decided to take a little break from my Journey to Motherhood series because part of what I want to be talking about on this channel involves womanhood, family, and calling. And so it's so important to me that we address the breadth of those three pillars. And so today, what I want to talk to you about is more on the calling side. Essentially, why did I decide to go and get a PhD? Now, for the average person, when you meet a Nigerian, education is a big part of who we are. It's one of the big core values that we have as a people. I think stemming from generations before us, where it seemed like without an education, and not just any kind of education, getting to the highest point of your career as you could was the best way to be able to advance, to be able to succeed, as well as ultimately provide for your family. And so education, as you might know, is a core value for the average Nigerian, dare I even say average African. And so this is the story of how I decided to do my PhD and what are some of the things I guess I have learned in the journey towards becoming a PhD holder. And I'm doing this to help those of you who are also maybe thinking, is this the next or the right path for me in life? And so I want to be able to provide you guys with maybe some good tips, things to consider as you think about what's next for you in your academic pursuit. So I guess maybe we should start from here. Why did I decide to go the route of being a doctor, the PhD route, and not a doctor, the MD route? I think it's best for me to answer that question by sharing with you guys a little bit of my educational journey. So after I finished high school, secondary school, like we say in Nigeria, after I finished that, I was 16, which is a typical age for people, and maybe even younger actually. 15, 16 is the typical age that the average student leaves secondary school, high school to go to university in Nigeria. And so I, just like anybody else, I left at 16. And at the time, I think my sights were still set on being a doctor, like an MD, but I wasn't particularly sure the what, I wasn't particularly sure the why. And so thankfully my parents had friends who I had the opportunity of talking to and seeking and understanding, what were the different specializations essentially. And so I remember having a conversation with one of my aunts, my mom's friends, and she said to me, girl, if you want to have a family, she is from the Dominican Republic. And she was like, be a dentist. They have better hours. You still make good money. And you'll have time for your family because that's something that I know that you want. And so I was like, okay, dentistry actually isn't bad. My biggest thing was I didn't want to not be able to have a family. And based off of all the movies we had seen, Grey's Anatomy, the series, it just looked like they didn't have a life outside of being in, the operating room or at the hospital. And I didn't want that for myself. So when she said dentistry, I'm like, okay, cool. That makes sense. However, while all of this is happening in Nigeria, you have to take an entrance exam. It's a nationwide exam to get into the Nigerian universities. And so it's called JAMB. And so I had taken JAMB, got a good score to be able to do post-JAMB, right? So you do JAMB, you check your score compared to the cutoff for your state, and then you proceed to the next level. So I believe for JAMB, I had written like dentistry. Yeah, I think it was dentistry I had put on there as the course that I wanted to do. Anyways, long and short of the story, just so that it's not super long and I get to what I actually want to talk about. Long and short of the story, I ended up not having a high enough score to go directly into dentistry after doing the post UME. And so there was an opportunity to continue on in the program through what was called a diploma course. So you would do a first year diploma and then transition into second year full on in the course or whatever. So I guess at the time, I can't remember the details of it, it's kind of fuzzy, but at the time it seemed like when we decided, oh, I know what happened. So I was also applying to schools in the US. It had always been a dream of mine. I knew people who had gone abroad, and I'm like, I really love the way that they speak, the way they carry themselves, the way they're able to actually clearly express their thoughts. And so that was something that I always wanted. And so I'd also simultaneously applied to a few schools in the States. And so while all of this stuff was happening, I was starting to get like acceptances here and there. But the biggest thing was I wasn't getting funding, and there was no way that my parents were about to cough up over 30 to 40,000 US dollars at the time for tuition, because again, I was international, so I'm paying out of state tuition. There was no way that was going to happen. The only way I was going to make it to the US for school was if I had a scholarship. So I was getting these like $5,000 scholarships, which, I mean, they're not nothing. They just weren't enough for my parents to be able to say, hey, go ahead, we can comfortably cover part of the tuition. So when all of that fell through, I didn't get enough funding that year. It was like, okay, what are we going to do? We went the diploma route. But at the time that we then went in that direction, I think what had happened was I was kind of late because I was waiting for something else. And so they ended up, the only thing that they could actually give me, even though my score qualified for dentistry, was physiology, I think, was like the next best thing. And I'm just like what is that even? Like, what am I going to do with that? So I came up with a plan with my mom and my educational advisors. And what we decided to do was, let's do a go around again, continue on in the diploma program, at least start, right? And then do a second go around of applications to schools in the US, beef up your application. I would have these college level classes anyway, all the things. And so I was like, okay, delay is not denial. Let's keep pushing. And so I went in through the physiology track. So I think from that point on, maybe my longing to want to be a doctor in any sense, dealing with patients, dealing with people, it kind of started to wane, right? As I was in the program, taking these classes, in these huge auditoriums. So in our class, we had like people who were trying to go in for medicine, going for dentistry, physiology, physiotherapy, radiography. I feel like I'm missing something. Can't remember now, but it was huge classrooms. And I'm just like, if you know anything about me, I'm such a big introvert. Like, I have my group of friends and I'm cool with my group of friends and things, but like, it was too much. So anyways, to cut a long story short, that year rolled around and I was able to get good funding at the school that I ended up going, which is Maryville College in Tennessee, the heart of the Great Smoky Mountains. And I was able to leave. At that point, I was in second year physiology, right? So I left. And at the time, I had gone in to be a biology major. So in the US, you don't directly just go to medical school like you do in Nigeria. You would do a first degree. So for some people, there'd be pre-med track, biology major, chemistry, biochem, whatever, something in the sciences. And then after 4 years of undergrad, then you apply to go to med school. And that's another like 4 years plus, right? For your degree and then like your residency and all the things. So you had to do a first degree regardless. So I'm like, you know what, I'll just go. I'm going to do biology. I'm good in the sciences. And so that's exactly what I did for that process. Went in and started to take classes. But here's the thing. Not only was I taking classes, I was also taking lab courses. And there was something about seeing or practicalizing the knowledge of what was happening in class in a lab setting. And I started to get very, very comfortable with beakers and measuring flasks and, just the little projects that we would be doing. And I'm like, wait, what kind of job do I need to do to be able to be within a lab context, technically? And so obviously you ask questions, you talk to your professors, super open. And it was like, oh, maybe I want to be a scientist. Maybe I want to be a scientist. And every time I would go back home to Nigeria, I would volunteer at like the Sickle Cell Foundation of Nigeria. So I would be the first year, obviously I didn't have that much lab knowledge. So I was doing like marketing and PR and crowdfunding. But then by the next time where I was more advanced in my lab courses, I started doing lab work. So like lab testing, genotyping, those type of things. And I remember I started to post about it a lot on my Facebook. It was almost like a journal I was keeping at the time. And one of my professors actually saw it and was like, hey, there's a grant that we have that we are paying people to essentially it was a lab apprentice program. And essentially what you would be doing, it was setting up the labs, running things in the autoclave, so cleaning things. It was like the handiwork, like a lab manager type vibe. But you were a student, obviously, so they had grants to be able to pay us like a miserly amount, but it was enough to spark my interest to want to apply. So when she told me about this program, I very quickly applied and I got hired to be a lab apprentice. And so I would have to, plan my schedule in addition to all the things I had to do at school at the time. And essentially, yeah, that was how my love for being in a lab was sparked by my professor's interest in what I was posting on Facebook at the time. And so over the years, I got hired on to continue in like biochemistry labs and genetics labs. And I did that all the way through to the end of my senior year in college. And then I was certain, I'm like, okay, yeah, I definitely want to go to grad school. So senior year, I'm applying, taking the GRE, applying to all these schools. And I didn't get in that year. And when I tell you I was crushed, I'm like, not again, not me having to go again at this journey, not getting it the first time. Like, what is this? Anyways, I loved science. I loved being able to, again, it's the practicality of, I still can't quite put into words the way that my brain just fires when I'm in a lab. It's one of my favorite things. The curiosity required, the questioning, and then creating opportunities to ask questions that will then help you answer a final question. I loved the whole thing. And so I didn't get in, but thankfully I got hired on after I graduated from my alma mater to be essentially the lab manager for the natural science division. So I'm setting up labs, I'm running labs. And so then I'm like, wait, I really like this teaching thing. And I remember Dr. Swan, God bless her. When she hired me, she said to me, this is a 1-year gig. You're getting into grad school next year. And I said, yep, okay. And so that was the thing. We worked together, from, oh my God, Dr. Brigatti, Dr. Gibson. These women really, 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 really showed me what the possibilities of my future could look like, to teach students, create opportunities for them to learn about a created world, like just how amazing God has created the world, from the molecules to, like, it's just, it was fascinating to me. So anyways, long and short of the story, I got into grad school. Okay. I got into grad school that year, and I got in for my master's actually at Purdue, and then I transitioned into a PhD program. I've talked a lot. I just wanted to give you some kind of context as to why, and how I ended up with a PhD. I realized through my life's journey that I really, really enjoyed being in a lab setting. I really, really enjoyed the process of asking, thinking through questions, and just being able to provide, I don't know. My brain, my mind was fully engaged in this opportunity to ask questions, come up with a hypothesis, create a method of how I was going to answer those questions, and then get to a result that brought me closer to an answer that I didn't know before. And so that's why I ended up deciding to go the route that I did. And more specifically, I loved teaching. And in my head, the only way that I was able to go about that was to go get my PhD. And so the reason why I got a PhD was not for hype, was not for vibes. It was because it was going to help me reach my ultimate career goals, which was to be a teacher, a professor in a university setting. That's what my goal was at the time. I don't know that I am completely rid of the idea either, because I'm really passionate about teaching. But that's essentially why I decided to go to grad school. I think the first thing I would say to anyone who's considering if they should go get a PhD is this. What do you need the PhD for? You've got to sit down and be honest with yourself. Are you doing this for clout, for vain ambition, just because you wanted to, or it is actually something that's going to help you along your career trajectory? The reason why I say that is because there are many times during your PhD journey that you're going to feel like quitting. This is just a general rule of thumb, okay? Because at the end of the day, what your PhD is actually teaching you is how to get to your wit's end and overcome. So if you're doing it just for the degree, just for the title, you will quit, because there's nothing that's necessarily keeping you motivated to keep pressing on when you get to your wit's end, because you will get to your wit's end and you'll get there multiple times. So know the reason why you want to get a PhD. Don't do it if you don't have to do it. I say this and people think, are you trying to dissuade people? And it's just like, no, I just don't think you need to go through the mental torture sometimes of going through your PhD. It's very grueling. It's very tasking. And maybe this brings me to my second point. You're going to need more grit than you think for a PhD. And this is why. A PhD is a designation that you are one of the most knowledgeable people on one specific particular topic, right? So for example, my PhD was in a biochemistry lab essentially, and we were working on DNA replication and repair. Now there are a gazillion proteins responsible for DNA replication and repair, but I specifically focused on like 3 of those, right? More like 2, most specifically. So you become an expert on 2 things, right? And it's about the topic and the subject and things, but a PhD is actually teaching you how to be a critical thinker, how to critically analyze information in a way that is in depth. And so yes, it's about a topic, but what you're actually being taught how to do is how to take complex information, grind it down to its finest detail, and be able to disseminate that information to a general audience. So you're going to need more grit than you think. The other thing is relationships are going to be strained. And I don't think a lot of people know this. When you get to a PhD, because especially, and I'm speaking as a scientist, right? So my training is different from someone who might be in psychology or in the social sciences. You're in lab working at odd hours. And so the times that maybe your friends are going out to hang out or they want to be on the phone to chat, you're in lab, you're troubleshooting an experiment. You're not necessarily available to do all the social things. Do I encourage trying to create some balance where this is something that you're intentional about? Yes, please. So just be aware of that. Okay. That relationships they're gonna be what they are. The other thing about it too is dating as a PhD student. That's another topic, but just know relationships in general, that's friendships, dating, they might be implicated. You're going to be broke because you're not sure if you're a student or you're a contractor and you get paid something, but it's only enough to maybe like cover your rent. So like your feeding and all the nice things that people your age are doing flying around the world, you're not able to do that. So you use conferences for like trips. You're going to be broke. Just accept that. Because you don't know, you're a student. Are you a student? Are you a contractor? You're going to be broke. Okay. Ultimately, here's the thing I would say. I think getting a PhD is great. It's fantastic. But know why you're getting it. It's a tough road. It's tough work. And hopefully on this channel, I'll be able to disseminate some more information, give you some more tips and tricks if this is something that you're interested in doing. But also feel free to send me a message, put in the comments. I would love to connect with you if going or getting a PhD is something that you are thinking about, that you're considering. I would love, love, love to connect with you on that. So have a good one, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.